mythological figures. The old man as the advisor. Well, specifically, what he made me think of is the Japanese sword master.
Remember, a Jedi can feel the Force flowing through him.
I've known some of those people, and this man has a bit there, that character.
Well, there's something mythological, too, isn't there, in the sense that the hero is helped by this stranger who shows up and gives him some instrument, a sword or a sheaf of light, shaft of light.
He gives him not only a physical instrument, but a psychological commitment.
Use the Force, Luke.
And a psychological center.
This time, let go your control self, Luke. Let go, Luke. And act on instinct.
Well, he had him exercising with that strange weapon and then pulled the mask over. That's real Japanese stuff.
I'll take care of myself.
When I took our two sons to see it, they did the same thing the audience did at that moment when the voice of Ben Kenobi says to Luke Skywalker in the climactic moment,
Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke. Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke.
Grab it.
the audience broke out into
They did.
elation, into applause.
Well, you see, this thing communicates. It is in a language that is talking to young people today. And that's marvelous.
So the hero goes for something. He doesn't just go along for the ride. He's not a mere adventurer.
Well, a serendipitous adventure can take place also. You know what the word serendipity comes from? It comes from the Sanskrit serendripa, the isle of silk. And that's marvelous. Formerly the name of Ceylon. And it's a story about a family that's just rambling on its way to Ceylon, and all these adventures take place.
Use the force, Luke. Let go, Luke.
So you can have the serendipitous adventure as well.
Let go, Luke.
Is the adventurer who takes that kind of trip a hero in the mythological
He
sense?
is ready for it. This is a very interesting thing about these mythological themes. The achievement of the hero is one that he is ready for, and it's really a manifestation of his character. And it's amusing the way in which the landscape and the conditions of the environment match the readiness of the hero. The adventure that he's ready for is the one that he gets.
Look, I ain't in this for your revolution, and I'm not in it for you, Princess. I expect to be well paid.
The mercenary, Solo, begins as a mercenary and ends up as a hero.
He was a very practical guy, a materialist in his character, at least as he thought of himself, but he was a compassionate human being at the same time and didn't know it. And that's marvelous. The adventure evoked a quality of his character that he hadn't known he possessed.
I love you.
He thinks he's an egoist, he really isn't. And that's a very lovable kind of human being, I think, and there are lots of them functioning beautifully in the world.
The good day style.
Hypothesis, scientific parabolas.
I always tell my students, follow your bliss.
Follow your bliss.
Your bliss, where the deep sense of being informed and going where your body and soul want to go. When you have that feeling, stay with it. Don't let it. Have you ever read Sinclair Lewis's Babbitt?
Not in a long time.
You remember the last line? I've never done a thing I wanted to in all my life. That's the man who never followed his bliss. Well, I heard that. I always tell my students, follow your bliss.
Follow your bliss?
Your bliss, where the deep sense of being informed and going where your body and soul want to go. When you have that feeling, then stay with it and don't let anyone throw you off. Have you read Sinclair Lewis's Babbitt?
Not in a long time.
Remember the last line? I've never done a thing I wanted to in all my life. That's the man who never followed his bliss. Well, I heard that line. I was living in Bronxville when I was teaching at Sarah Lawrence. Before I was married, I used to be eating out in the restaurants of the town for my lunch and dinners. And Thursday night was the maid night off in Bronxville, so that all the families were out in the restaurants. And one fine evening, I was in my favorite restaurant there. It was a group restaurant. And at the table was sitting a father, a mother, and a scrawny little boy, about 12 years old. The father says to the boy, drink your tomato juice. And the boy says, I don't want to. And the father, with a louder voice, says, drink your tomato juice. And the mother says, don't make him do what he doesn't want to do. The father looks at her and he says, he can't go through life doing what he wants to do. Said, if he does only what he wants to do, he'll be dead. Look at me. I've never done the thing I wanted to in all my life. I didn't. Babbitt incarnate. And that's the man who never followed his bliss. Well, you may have a success in life, but then just think of it. What kind of life was it? What good is it? You've never done the thing you wanted to in all your life.
What happens when you follow your bliss?
You come to bliss. Favorite image that occurs in many, many contexts is the wheel of fortune. There's the hub of the wheel, and there's the revolving rim of the wheel. And if you are attached to the rim of the wheel, let's say fortune, you will be either above, going down at the bottom, or coming up. But if you are at the hub, you're in the same place all the time. And that's the sense of the marriage vow. You know, I take you in health or sickness, you know, in wealth or poverty, but I take you, and you are my bliss. Not the wealth that you might bring me, nor the social prestige, but you. And that's following your bliss. Now, I came to this idea of bliss because in Sanskrit, which is the great spiritual language of the world, and they know all about it, and have known about it for a long time. The transcendent is transcendent. But there are three terms that bring you to the brink. You might say the jumping off place to the ocean. And the three terms are Sat, Chit, Ananda. And Sat, the word Sat means being. Chit means full consciousness. And Ananda means rapture. So I thought, I don't know whether my consciousness is full consciousness or not. I don't know whether my being is proper being or not. But I do know where my rapture is. So let me hang on to rapture, and that'll bring me both being and full consciousness. And it worked.
What was your rapture?
Well, it started with Indians, and then it went on into more and more mythological matters and the realm of the arts, music, and when I met Gene, then the dance came in, and this is it. Just stay with that.
And one doesn't have to be a poet to do this. Carpenters do it.
A poet is simply one who's made a profession and a lifestyle of being in touch with that.
Carpenters do it. Carpenters do it.
I don't know whether my being is proper being or not, but I do know where my rapture is. So let me hang on to rapture, and that'll bring you both.
Carpenters do it. Carpenters do it.
A war that isn't the one you're interested in, isn't the one you're interested in. Most people have to be concerned with other things. They get themselves involved in economic and other activities, or get drafted into a war that isn't the one you're interested in. And how to hold to this umbilical, you might say, in those circumstances. That's a technique each one has to work out for himself somehow. But most people living in that realm of what might be called occasional concerns, they all have the capacity that's waiting to be awakened to move to this other place. I know. Suddenly you hit on something that the student really responds to. You can see the eyes open, the complexion changes, life possibility is open there. And all you can say to yourself is, I hope this child hangs on to that. You know, they may or may not, but grab it. When they do, they've found a life right there in the room with them. And there you're talking on about the things that students ought to be reading. And if you are attached to the rim of the wheel, let's say fortune, you will be either above, going down at the bottom, or coming up. But if you are at the hub, you're in the same place all the time. That's the sense of the marriage vow. You know, I take you in health or sickness, you know, in wealth or poverty, but I take you, and you are my bliss, not the wealth that you might bring me, nor the social prestige, but you. And that's following your bliss.
Carpenters do it.
I know it. I've seen it happen in students. Wonderful way of teaching we had at Sarah Lawrence, where I taught for 38 years. I'd have an individual conference with every one of my students at least once a fortnight for half an hour or so. And there you're talking on about the things that students ought to be reading, and suddenly you hit on something that the student really responds to. You can see the eyes open, the complexion changes, life possibility has opened there. And all you can say to yourself is, I hope this child hangs on to that, you know. They may or may not, but when they do, they've found a life right there in the room with you. Grab it.
Poets do this. Carpenters do it. How would you advise somebody to tap that spring of eternal life, that joy that is right there?
Well, we're having experiences all the time, which grab it, may, on occasion, render some sense of this, a little intuition of where your joy is. Grab it. No one can tell you what it's going to be. I mean, you've got to learn to recognize your own depths. Grab it.
Do you ever have this sense when you're following your bliss, being helped by hidden hands?
All the time. It's miraculous. I even have a superstition that has grown on me as the result of...
When you're following your bliss, being helped by hidden hands?
It's miraculous. Invisible hands coming all the time. Namely, that if you do follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while waiting for you. And the life that you ought to be living is the one you're living somehow. And well, you can see it. You begin to deal with people who are in the field of your bliss, and they open doors to you. I say follow your bliss and don't be afraid, and doors will open where you didn't know they were going to be.
Do you ever have sympathy for the man who has no invisible means of support?
Who has no invisible means? Yes, he's the one that evokes compassion, you know, the poor chap. And to see him stumbling around when the water of immortal life is right there is really, it evokes one's pity.
Right there? Right there? You
Yes.
believe that?
Yes.
The waters of eternal life?
Right there. Grab it.
Where?
Wherever you are. It's miraculous. And that's marvelous.
I'll take them myself.